It's Wellness Wednesdays. I don't know why that little theme just stuck. It's the image. It inspires me. Anyway, it is Wellness Wednesdays with Slimer and Cthulhu in the background. One may say that my background makes me seem unwell, but I think it's fun. We're talking today about manipulations, and it's going to sort of be twofold here. How to know if you're being manipulated, and how to know if you are manipulating. And that second part, I know is going to be touchy, but I found more and more that people have been taught manipulation tactics, by people they trust, loved ones, especially parents, and they don't see them for what they are. So they perpetuate the behaviors unintentionally. They don't recognize that what these particular things do is not healthy for anybody involved. If you engage in ongoing manipulative behaviors, it's going to increase imposter syndrome. It's going to be undermining to your sense of self. It's going to rattle the faith you have in the people around you. And, you're probably wondering why the hell is all this happening, because you're not aware, you're not connecting what you're doing to, the outcomes of the situations. And some people, a lot of people in this situation can feel very, very blamed when we get into this topic. And that's not my intent here. What I found is when I started learning the manipulative behaviors I have been taught, I felt like I had much more control over what was happening to me because, when I started consciously communicating clearly, directly, specifically, and completely, if shit went bad, if somebody didn't take it well, I could honestly say that was not on me. I was fair. I was, I was open to listening. I was empathetic. I gave people turns to talk. I, made sure I gave them positive feedback, even in tense situations. If all that is happening and the other person still behaves badly, the nice thing is, it's not you, right? It's when you get into these mind games that it starts becoming a very, very gray area. And, abusive families of origin tend to use these tactics. So, whenever you have a complaint about somebody, they can go, well, you did this and you did this and you did this. That's not the time to bring it up. And I think a lot of people are going, yeah, my family does that. It's a manipulation tactic. If someone has an issue with what you've done, the appropriate time to bring that up is at the time, not as a retaliation for you saying you weren't happy with something. That's the difference between something being sincere, this bothers me, and something being retaliatory. If they didn't bring it up at the time, it wasn't important enough to bring it up at the time. They're just using it to avoid owning what they're doing in the present. Makes sense? That's an example. If you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Again, these videos don't do as well as some of the others, but I like doing them because the people that do watch them find them incredibly helpful. And one of the reasons that manipulation, I believe, is so widespread and so difficult to identify now is a lot of people use therapeutic language because they've had too much not good therapy to manipulate the people around them. There have been more than a few people that I have worked with, and they start talking and they start pushing the various buttons, and it's like, this person had a lot of therapy in their young life. Instead of it actually helping them, it just taught them how to manipulate better than the people around them. So, terms like gaslighting, right? That is a legitimate thing. And it's perfectly okay to say you're feeling like gaslighting is going on at the moment. But unfortunately, too many people now use gaslighting to gaslight. Quite frankly, if someone is deliberately gaslighting someone, they're never going to admit it. And saying you're gaslighting me is only going to get a no, I'm not. So if you're at that point, you kind of have to assess the situation. But, gaslighting's a tricky one, because I think gaslighting is one of those ones that is learned behavior, especially from mothers. The whole thing of this happened. Oh, you're making a big deal about it. You're such a drama queen. This, that, and the next thing. That's invalidating your complaint. It's very common. It's not okay in a healthy relationship. It's not, do you think you might be overreacting? It's you're overreacting. And this is where it's like, oh my God, even talking about tactics that are manipulative can be a form of manipulation. I mean, it's everything, right? Manipulators, the difference between a manipulation and just an honest complaint. Not all complaints are manipulation, okay? An honest complaint is prepared to hear the other side. It's an I feel statement instead of a you are statement. It's not... Manipulation is defined as an exercise of harmful influence over other people. That's the line. So if someone's guilting you into something, attempting to get a specific answer, a specific action out of you, that's very different than something someone says that makes you feel guilty because it's true, right? The problem with not having any healthy relationships is it's really hard to get a perspective on how it's different. Once you start having some healthy relationships, you see the difference between an honest and authentic communication and one of manipulation. And the key one where guilt gets used to manipulate is people go, it makes me feel bad when you say that. You ever had that happen? So, this makes me feel bad. So what? What are they offering to do? Is that commiserating with you because it's not their fault? Or is it a way to shut you up because the message is you're wrong for making me feel bad. It is always bad to make me feel bad. That's the big difference, right? It's perfectly fine if somebody says, I feel terrible that I did that. I feel terrible that I screwed that up for you. But it should sort of be followed by, I'll watch it next time, or, what can I do to avoid that, or something active to make it clear it's not just a shut up about this now, right? And a lot of people don't intend to do that. They lack self-compassion. They lack a stable sense of self. And so anything that sounds like criticism, they just fall apart and can't handle it. But because they lack that resiliency, they tend to manipulate. And they get into that, the checklist of manipulation is guilt, complaining. Again, there's a difference in complaining to manipulate and complaining to just be honest that something's not working out. More on that in a bit. Comparing, that's a will you do it too, or will you do this? Also known as a what is it? Two quoque? I forget how it's pronounced. Argument. Lying. obviously. Denying, different from lying. Feigning ignorance or innocence, a subset of denying. Blame, and overall mind games. Just avoidance, I would say, is of that. This is like an official checklist that is commonly used. So if you wanted to look these up, you can. The complaining one is a very common one, telling the difference between a legitimate, non-manipulative complaint and a complaint designed to manipulate. Notice I said designed to manipulate, not intended to manipulate, because again, some of this stuff is just learned behavior. People think it's normal. They don't recognize the bad code underlying the behavior. I used to see this a lot in my own family, where instead of being, look, I can't keep up with the mess around here by myself. I really need some help keeping this place clean. The old school stereotype is, primary housekeeper figure walking around the house going like, oh, this mess is here again. And no, that got left again. That passive aggressive, not going, look, we need to talk about this, just clearly being irritated. And then when you go, what's wrong? Oh, nothing. That is someone trying to be nice in an unhealthy way. That is manipulation, because it's not fucking nothing, right? It's not nothing. It is totally fair for someone to be, there are 5 people in this house and making messes and 1 person cleaning it up. That's a totally fair complaint, right? But it's that directness. Now, the problem is, if you're in a group of manipulators, and a lot of you are probably ahead of me on this one, direct communication is met with manipulation. And that's why I say what I ended up having to do is I'm going to do the right thing. If other people don't do the right thing, that is not on me. And I'm not going to respond to it. And I'm going to set boundaries. Now, setting boundaries on manipulation can be very tough, because a person trained to manipulate, especially people who don't realize what they're doing is manipulative, will get increasingly desperate the more their manipulations don't work. Because underlying this particular brand of, unintentional unhealthiness, bad code. I talk about bad code a lot here, but underlying this unhealthy, for the most part, there are exceptions to this, but a vast majority of people who do manipulate, often without realizing it, are people that think that their worth is defined by basically collecting people. The number of people who will pay attention to them, the number of people who will eat their shit, the number of people who will tell them they're good, hit that attention button, right? The number of people they can get to basically blow smoke up their ass, because it never feels legitimate because of all that imposter syndrome. Because it's manipulation, nobody can trust it. But it comes from that sense of, your sense of self-worth comes from constant external validation. It's part of the reason people who do YouTube stuff often go completely stark raving bonkers, right? Because they get that first hit of attention. And then they got all this traffic and they start getting, positive attention, often for the first time in their life. And it's like a drug. And they're like, I want that. And so they'll do more and more and more stuff to try to get that positive attention. And then after a while, they know they're not doing things that are authentic. They're creating content specifically to get that attention hit, right? And it starts working less and less well. Because even if they're not constantly aware that they're manipulating their audience with, trying to min-max content, game the algorithm, and the audience is sort of, they feel manipulated through, I have to do things that are popular, or, no, you don't. No, you don't. You can do what I do things you're pretty sure are going to piss some people off, take the hits because the long-term authenticity is more important. You don't have to do anything. It's fucking YouTube, not the Spanish Inquisition, but people get so wrapped up their identity becomes that viewer count, that follower count, that kind of stuff. You see it on like Twitter all the time. I have this many followers and you only have this many. What are you to tell? What does that mean? That doesn't make you more right. Being more popular does not make you more right. They're very different things. But I see a lot of YouTubers just either they completely crack up or their content goes to absolute dog shit because they're just craving attention, right? Some people get that stuff from YouTube. Other people feel the need for something more in person. They feel the need to dominate people's time and attention in this constant, almost emotional vampire thing going on. That's, and they always seem to be unhappy. They never seem to be in control. That's what happens when you have multi-generational cycles of abuse that, have been going on for so long that the behaviors are just taught. People don't know why they're doing these things. They don't know why everyone they seem to have come into their lives is a shitbag. And they don't understand why these things keep happening. And then it's victim blaming when you attempt to do any sort of skills reset. That, well, here's a different way of going about it. Oh, but that's hard. Yes, change is fucking hard, and often people get into intentions. To me, focusing only on intentions instead of outcomes. Sometimes it's valid, right? When we get into issues of, how to deal with certain behaviors, right? The whole racism, sexism, homophobia, and stuff like that thing. Intent super duper matters, right? If someone is an open, shitty person who's saying stuff that they damn well know better, they're just doing it to troll, obviously you respond to that person very differently than somebody who, again, has just been fed bad information, right? Some manipulation is deliberate, even if people deny it. Now, some people do come from incredibly savage backgrounds where they think it's normal to use, find out people's weaknesses and exploit those. Even if somebody thinks that's normal, that's deliberate manipulation. It is. If, something like releasing a piece of a conversation online that makes a person look unduly bad, that is a deliberate manipulation. A thing that's very common on the internet, which is also highly manipulative, is people using common insecurities to fling at someone, just because it hurts most people, so we'll fling it at them, right? It took a long time for the fat, ugly bitch, dyke, all that stuff to stop with me. Eventually, I don't know if it's, connected to being blocked by a lot of, the fake left-wing types, but it was amazing how many alleged 15-year-old girls on Twitter called me names like that during the whole Last of Us 2 brouhaha. But that's manipulation, right? So what, I'm fat, so what, I'm old, so what, I'm ugly, so what, I'm a bitch, so what, I'm a homophobe, this, that, the next thing. That is not dealing with what I'm saying. It's just a manipulation tactic. These are obvious to spot, right? These are obvious to recognize when it's being done. It's obvious when you yourself are doing it. These are very conscious things. Those are easy to stop doing, in most cases. With some people, it's so ingrained. Like I said, it feels more normalized because the family of origin was abusive or the workplace was abusive, that it sort of becomes background, it becomes instinctual, and that's hard to change. But the gray areas come in, and these are much more difficult. The idea of give and take in terms of, sacrificing things, right? Creating dependencies, all that stuff. Gotta be real careful how I put this. There are times you are going to choose to give stuff up for another person. That's not necessarily manipulative. If you feel like you actually have a choice, right? If you don't feel like you have a choice but to give in to someone, stop and take a couple breaths. You probably do have another option. It won't be fun, but what I found in the long run is sometimes it's better to be the bitch in the short term than to keep putting up with someone's shit. It's better to just, let the drama happen, let the blow up happen, let the temper tantrum happen now. So yeah, put your fucking foot down, because you're going to suffer for the tantrum or you're going to suffer through being controlled by this person. That's your choice. There's no good option, right? So sometimes the short-term worst option is the better long-term option, if that makes any sense. Because you get it over with now, and it's done, and it's over, and you can get away from that person somehow. Now, when someone has made somebody financially dependent on them, obviously that's more difficult. There are ways to stand your ground gently. They take some practice. And, in dangerous situations like that, those are probably the hardest, when you are reliant on someone, to stay fed and housed, right? The thing is, and this is just a truism that I found, I had to completely reprogram myself in this regard, because, we're nerds. We all have the people were mean to us in the past. I swallowed the load of bull that if I was as nice as possible and was just kind and, always did the right thing, I'd find a group of people that appreciated me for that. And, it would just be this big old love fest like in cartoons. Don't ever internalize My Little Pony in that way. That's not life. The way to make sure you attract good people is through boundaries. There's a big difference between being nice and being a doormat, and always being that person that will give shit up for other people. There's no filter on the people you end up getting close to in that regard. You're going to get a lot of manipulators when you do stuff like that. Just because once a manipulator is successful in a manipulation, they're going to keep doing it. Just makes sense, right? And this is why manipulators are so destructive in gaming communities. Because gaming, in a lot of ways, is very much a giving economy. I am continually stunned by the stuff people in the gaming community are willing to do just to help. And it's not just in game, it's stuff surrounding games, the fan art, the music, the fan videos, like all the, it's just a very giving of spirit environment, I think, because it's surrounding something that's usually an enjoyable activity. When you get a manipulator in that environment, they can cause a lot of damage, right? Because not only do they use people, but people get so burned that it totally destroys their trust. People end up feeling stupid because they got fooled. Don't feel stupid because you were fooled. You didn't do anything wrong by taking someone at their word. That person did something wrong for breaking their word. First and foremost, people feel so much guilt because they got manipulated by a manipulator, they shut down and don't trust anybody. And that's not healthy. That leads to that, profound killer loneliness that affects a lot of people, but we know more and more it uniquely affects men. I think because in part men are sort of expected to, totally have everything locked down all the time. And that's not human, part of the misogynistic history of our various cultures is that women are often the bigotry of low expectations, right? The misogynistic idea that women lie means some women are allowed to get away with a lot of lying, right? Now, men lie their asses off too, but you tend to see more high profile cases of men getting caught and punished for that, in part because back in the day, believe it or not, women were seen as not fully culpable or not culpable at all for any crimes of any nature committed with their husbands. I wish I was kidding. If you go back and look at some of the early demands of first wave feminism, it was that women be held fully accountable for crimes under the law. Yeah. Women were not treated as whole, actualized people who could make choices. And so in a lot of ways, that stereotypical female behavior was trained and rewarded because people just assumed that's what women naturally did, right? So certain of these manipulative behaviors are historically more common among women because it was assumed that's what women just did. But you're seeing more and more of it like crossing the gender line now, right? Every time somebody's like, that's hurtful on a TV show, and it's like, how am I supposed to feel about that other than I want to fucking punch somebody, right? Is it hurtful in a constructive way? Or is that a manipulation? Oh, it's hurtful. You're not allowed to say it. Well, no, sometimes people are allowed to say things that are hurtful if you're being a fucking prick, right? Another big marker of manipulation you really got to watch, and this is, again, widespread. It takes some work to not do this because you see it all over the place. Always and nevers, or exaggeration and generalization. It is a big red flag that somebody has major issues when they go into a shame spiral and start going either, the predictions, no one is ever going to care about me or nobody ever has cared about you. And, it's a loved one and you're sitting there going, what am I, chopped liver? It's a sign of mental illness, but it's also a manipulation tactic. Because really, what is it? What are they saying? It's trying to talk themselves into an excuse to give up, to not try, to not do the hard stuff. All you're doing is keeping yourself stuck in misery, right? The hard stuff is how you feel better. And the more you practice the hard stuff, the less hard it gets, to the point that it gets pretty easy to do this stuff. It actually seems comparatively exhausting to jump through hoops as opposed to just be, even-handed, fair, direct, specific, and complete, right? Then you get into that. You see this in gaming all the time, the cruel humor. What some people write off as trash talk. But, let's face it. What is trash talk designed to do? Throw somebody off their game. That's why it happens in competitive sports. It is a deliberate manipulation tactic. You are trying to get into someone's head. Keep that in mind when you're doing it and, you're not a pro or it's not like a super competitive thing. And then there's the one I encounter the most, and I find it incredibly difficult to deal with, is passive aggression. Passive aggression is a real learned behavior. Um, is this okay? Yeah, I guess. That's not a firm statement. Yeah, I guess is a no, it's not okay. Right? It's people that are not willing to own being angry, which is another manipulation tactic because angry is bad in current year. So they won't name their feelings. It'll be, oh, fine, when it's clearly not fine, or whatever when they care very much. It's very, very hard because it's just, you're being passive aggressive. No, I'm not. Because they're being passive aggressive. Passive aggression to me is the most difficult form of manipulation to overcome. And I find the most effective, not pleasant, but effective way to deal with passive aggression is to take someone at their word. Fine. All right, they say they're fine. And then when it's clear it's not fine, it's not fine. But then when it's clear it's not fine, don't give them anything. They'll throw a massive fit. But you make it clear that you're holding them to be accountable for what they're saying. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And some people are just going to be not worth the trouble. I hate having to play the nice game where I let somebody do something I know is manipulative just because it's not my place to train them out of it. And it's like, all right, that's fine. But I don't trust them anymore. It's like manipulation. Yep, I've got the read of this now. And that person immediately becomes a lower priority for my time. I prefer to deal with people who are honest, who are upfront. I would prefer somebody be blunt in a way that can be a problem within reason over passive aggressively nice. Because passive aggression is just so fucking toxic. It is literally a poison, right? Because that's the thing I don't understand. I can tell someone's passive aggressive when they read passive aggressive intents into things I do. It's like, no, I said that because I meant it. Well, nobody ever means that. Oh, I see. Okay. Make a mental note of that. And yes, continuing to play nice with somebody who is manipulative is itself a form of manipulation. And so do it as sparingly as you possibly can. Sometimes you have to because it's work, right? It's a job. It's family events you can't get out of or something like that. But as long as you're conscious of what you're doing, you're okay. Because if you're aware you're doing it and you're aware it's for a limited time, you're accountable for that. You can stop, right? You'll be able to turn that off, put that back in the box, go on with your life and resume being direct. It's the people who are in denial about manipulation that become really out of control and can cause a lot of wreckage in families, communities, friends circles, and relationships. All right. I hope this was helpful. I'm sure it dug up some tough stuff because I know a lot of people have been dealing with this kind of thing. But yeah, hope it gave you a little bit of practical stuff about what to do. If you want more detail about any part of this video, please let me know. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.